Hey everyone. Finally, I sit down behind camera today. I'm feeling rather private. So I've just been in Sydney for 10 glorious days. Yeah, it has been quite a difficult time for many people, and the recent eclipse season really topped it off, I think. And I think the energy has been quite savage and unforgiving in many ways, and so many people seem to be having health problems at this time. Some of you know that my father was in hospital, and yes, 1 week turned into 4. And I'm very pleased to say he is home now, and thank you to those of you who were kind enough to send well wishes. And he's okay, but he's not well. You know, it's just, he's okay. And, you know, my father's health is just one of many cases that has been brought to my attention over the recent weeks. So I just want to send a whole lot of well wishes out there to all of you who are experiencing some challenges to your health or the health of a loved one. This is real, you know, we're not just putting this on. And I do believe the rather peculiar energetic undercurrent here from the planets is playing quite a significant role. So yes, the energy was crippling. The weather, folks, what is that all about? 3 nights ago I had the heater on, and I drove home yesterday and it capped at 32 degrees. I'm speaking Celsius, of course. And now it's dropped down to 17. So, you know, very, very windy here, which is quite typical for us in spring, the September winds. But still, I think that's causing some anxiousness for some people. It's a little unnerving. It doesn't assist people to settle back into themselves well. So, all that aside, I found myself down in Sydney, staying in my friend's beautiful apartment while they were in the UK. And for that I am truly, truly grateful. But I went down there with clear and solid objectives, you might say. And due to this erratic planetary weather pattern, I found my itinerary more or less liquefy and then evaporate. I knew who I wanted to see, I knew where I was going to go, and I achieved about 30% of my goals that I set for myself down there. So that doesn't sit well with the Scorpio. It's like, you know, speaking of crossing T's and dotting I's, I found that so interesting because before I left, I had no choice. And then, it seems to me, once I was able to sit quietly with myself, I realized that, let's put it this way, my soul had different ideas to my conscious mind. So, you know, there are no mistakes. If I didn't get to see the people I wanted to see, or, you know, achieve certain things, I guess it wasn't meant to be at that time. While I did sit quietly, and I am so very grateful for that, I realized that, well, first of all, I realized that I needed to sit quietly, be still, and I was very blessed to be in an environment where I was uninterrupted. And I think that was the whole point. By achieving these conscious mind goals, that would have kept me on the run, on the go, perhaps even pressed for time, where really on a higher level, what I required was quite the opposite. And what came through for me was as I sat there observing myself, I sensed that the need for simplification continues. It must go further. It must be given the time it requires. Because the sense I got is the less I have around me, the more uncomplicated and unburdened I feel. And it's very, very appealing. And notice I'm pointing the camera at some of my books, crystals and decks that I love. This isn't my main tarot bookshelf, of course, but I still love every deck and every book that I see there. Yet there was a sense of inner freedom as I sat with a small bag with a few decks and 2 books. And it's almost that sense of having nothing else to be responsible for other than what was in that small bag. And it was really quite blissful. And I guess it's because my little break, my little getaway in Sydney was in the wake of this very traumatic month where stress was high. I get that. However, as some of you know, I've been on a tower journey. I've been on a journey towards deeper and further simplification for quite some time. And that's what I feel happened. You know, the full moon came through and I had the most wonderful experience with that full moon. I hope you did. We had the most stunning, clear evening. And where I was in this apartment, it rose in one window, went across another, and then across another. It's just the way, you know, the apartment is facing. I basically had a full night of clear moon glow. It was truly a blessing. And being 8 floors up, it's almost like you feel, you know, you're that much closer to that beautiful glowing ball. Anyway, yes, it was glorious. And next, I was just going to share quickly some of the decks that I've been using, or well, perhaps some of the decks that I took away to Sydney. When I say some, it sounds like I took 30 decks with me. No, I didn't, but I took, I think, 4, 5. So, yeah, many of you will know this deck. One of my greatest loves is the Puppet Theatre Tarot. Here is the backing, and I did take this away to Sydney. I love the whole deck, but particularly the majors I find really appealing. I'm just going to do a little bit of that's better. We need focus here. Look at this death card. I really do adore this deck. I was introduced to this deck by Empathic Tarot, and she very kindly did a walkthrough and followed it up with a journey into the meanings of the cards according to the guidebook. Now, I didn't receive even a little white book with the deck that I purchased. However, it doesn't matter because the guidebook is written in Russian. So I found it to be a wonderful, wonderful help going through every card with her. I'll upload them below just in case you missed my earlier videos on this deck. Because as much as this is a Rider-Waite based deck, I feel that it is possible that one may perhaps miss some of the subtle symbology, because it's more or less delicately placed, I think, in the artwork. So it's Rider-Waite based Smith. Can you use this intuitively? Of course. But I'm just saying, I think it's highly advantageous if you are able to read the guidebook for this particular deck. That's just my opinion. But I'm very, very grateful to Empathic for doing so. And she said she may even not so much transcribe, but she may translate, the guidebook into English and make it available. And I said to her, I will gladly pay you if you go to that trouble. That's how much I love this deck. I love the concept. You know, all the world's a stage. It's like the play of life, and you'll notice they all have, let's just get this in focus, they all have a mask. And again, it's what we do. We all wear a mask. We adopt a persona, don't we, in order to sort of convey our identity out there in the public sector. We play a role because it is required of us. And you'll notice here that the backdrop changes accordingly. And take note of the various expressions on their faces. When I say the backdrop, I meant the colour of the backdrop, sorry. Anyway, I don't want to go into a long, drawn-out, you know, journey into this deck because I've already done it, but I absolutely adore this deck. So this is one that I took with me to Sydney. You know when you feel like you look at certain decks and you think, I just can't imagine ever tiring of this. You know, getting sick of looking at the images. Never. I just can't imagine it. And this fill card that I showed you briefly before, see how it's multicoloured at the back? I just trying to remember, I think it might be chakras, or is it emotions? Or both. I can't quite remember, but there is, I think it's just showing the possibilities, you know, the various, through the various colours, the various possibilities that are available to us, you know, the various emotional experiences. And the balloons represent the elements: fire, earth, air, water, and spirit. And take note, his glass, he doesn't have a mask because he is the spark of life, the very, very beginning. So yeah, that is one deck that I played around with. It comes with 2 extra cards too. I did explain that in my previous video, but you get a question mark, which may indicate that your question that you are asking is too broad. It's unable to be, you know, defined, or not easily defined. And I think this sort of hazy fog here is basically saying that your question can't be answered. It's not the time. There's no sort of solid, tangible solution or answer at this time. But this is more about how you're asking the question, if I remember correctly. So yeah, that's one deck that I've been spending quite a lot of time with, not just in Sydney, but prior to that. Another topic I was just going to bring up briefly is oracle decks. And really, I only speak of this because a few people brought up the subject matter of lengthy descriptions in guidebooks, which I truly appreciate. And I think, well, everyone is entitled to their opinion, and what works for some certainly is not going to work for others. So the way I look at oracles is it's best to use the oracle that suits the job at hand. So in other words, if I am experiencing time constraints, there's not much point in pulling out an Alana Fairchild guidebook, just as one example, because I think that's who most people quoted. But, you know, it's not just Alana Fairchild, let's be honest. But I do like her decks, and I think the artwork is really beautiful. Well, I say I do like her decks. I only own 2, but focus. Yeah, I find the guidebooks to be useful and meaningful, but I wouldn't grab this deck when I am with a client and I know there's only 3 minutes left, and there are so many beautiful oracles that you can use for those times where you know you only have a few moments. And, you know, like say the Vessel Oracle or the Extraordinary Oracle, even some of the, you know, mass-produced oracles that have keywords on them. Also the beautiful messenger cards by Sandra Kunz. They're wonderful to use. You know, you can read the guidebook, but it still has a message, but it doesn't take, you know, 5 minutes to read it. It's short, sweet, and to the point, and very effective. Also, I think even the Shamanic Healing Oracle, are they much the same, where it's got a message, but it doesn't go on and on. But I think it's a shame that people more or less are turned off by decks such as Sacred Oracles or Rumi or whatever other one you want to, you know, whatever you bring, whatever brings to mind, whatever comes to your mind. I'll get it out eventually. But look at that, it's so beautiful. So really, I think the idea behind it, these are meditation decks. And the way I look at it is, if I'm going to meditate, I need to take the time to see it through. There's not much point in sitting down for 30 seconds and going, oh, well, that's it, because I don't have time to meditate any longer. That's really out of focus. Sorry about that. And so that's the way I look at these cards. That's what works for me, and I'm just putting it up as a suggestion. It may or may not work for you. But if I'm going to go to the gym, same thing. I'm going to do, normally I do about a 90-minute session, but there's not much point in, for me at least, to go to the gym, get myself there, spend 15 minutes and then go, well, I don't have time for any more, and leave again. And that's really the way I see decks like this, unless, of course, you are happy to read them intuitively. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, but I just think it's a shame that you can't... I mean, read them intuitively, but I think it's a shame if you don't give yourself the opportunity to delve into the guidebook, because for me, I find them very, very meaningful and very useful. So that's, whoops, that's just my little take on decks such as this with, yeah, a meaty guidebook. And the same goes for the Dreams of Gaia. I actually took that to Sydney, and I've got to be honest with you, I haven't been using that deck. And some people call it a tarot and others call it an oracle. And for me, once again, I call it a meditation deck. So it's not a deck that I just instinctively reach for on a daily basis. The guidebook is very extensive, far more than the Alana Fairchild's. And, you know, by being extensive, that means it's also very in-depth. And there's huge advantages to that. So when I need to sit still and delve into, you know, what I call the deeper realms of self, well, the Dreams of Gaia is one tool that works very, very well for me. So I would not be in a hurry to part with it. And I speak of this, you know, again, in the wake of some comments that were made recently, people just sharing their stuff as I am now. But also I was prompted to make a love it or list it list. Because in this long journey of simplification that I keep talking about, that's what I thought. It's time to go through my decks. Not that there would be many, perhaps, that I would part with, but perhaps there will be some. But yeah, if I don't love it, I may as well list it to give it the home and surroundings that it deserves. And also to unburden myself of material possessions that no longer serve me, no longer serve my highest good. And before I move on, I just have to say trimming this deck was the best thing I ever did. Here's the Rumi. And, you know, just at a glance, I know which one I prefer, like borders or focus, with borders or without. There's no doubt. So this deck here is the next one that I will be trimming, because at one point I considered parting with the Rumi, and that's my other exercise, by the way. When a deck goes on to the list it department, I make myself pick it up and use it. And that's what I did with Rumi. I took it to Sydney and I really felt a wonderful reconnection with this deck. And the other thing is too, I do believe I did not how beautiful the artwork is. And I picked up this, you know, the Soul deck. I picked it up in a shop the other day in Sydney. And I thought, but this is so soulful. You know, some of the images are quite literal and others are very abstract and symbolic. Whoops. So this, for me, could be a soul deck in many ways. Look at that. And just allow yourself to be enveloped by that art. Allow yourself to take a journey. So I'm no longer in a hurry to part with this deck. I am going to trim it. I am going to continue to use the guidebook. You know, when the time is right, I will sit down and take the time. It really doesn't take that long. It's only a few pages of info. But of course, there may be other days where I feel the need to simply intuit my way through. My camera is going crazy. Just hasn't quite got it together yet. There we go. So yes, that's just a little comment I wanted to make with regards to oracles. And of course, again, I think it's always advantageous just to reassess your library and remind yourself of the decks that you have and how they are intended. And again, those decks, you know, the Alana Fairchilds and perhaps the Stacey DeMarcos, etc., 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 that have a decent-sized guidebook are designed for, you know, self-counselling. And again, I wouldn't go to a counselling session and expect to go in and out in a flash. So I really feel that if you give yourself some time, just before you give them away, if that's where you're at, just give yourself some time to reassess the language of the deck and you know, the intent behind the deck. What is the duty of this deck? Because you look at tarot, that's why, you know, we are blessed with so much diversity with regards to systems and artworks, because they all work differently. They all have their own voice, and so it's up to us, I think, to choose the right tool. You know, if you want to screw something into the wall, there's not much point in you know, grabbing a chisel, is there? And that's the way, like at this point in time where I find myself reassessing everything that's important, including my collection, I feel that it's my responsibility to take responsibility, because the deck is the deck. So it's not the deck that's changed, it's me. Before I end this ramble, I'll just show you the other deck I took to Sydney with me. I've never felt a disconnect with this deck. I absolutely love it. It's The Secret Language of Animals by Chip Richards. Everyone knows it. And this is another one where I would say I find the guidebook to be very meaningful. I wouldn't say necessarily that the artwork is my favorite, as in style. However, again, it works. It guides me. It gives me, or brings me, closer to clarity. It often confirms a suspicion that I may have had, or a consideration. And it's easy to understand. You get plenty of information in the guidebook without it dragging on, as some people feel for, you know, the other decks. Now, when I say it's not my favourite style of artwork, I would say, if I just had to think off the top of my head, another animal oracle. What do I own? I don't actually have many. But what I love is, as far as artwork goes, Animal Spirit I absolutely adore. But back to this baby here. What I will say, first of all, is there are a few cards that I absolutely love in this deck. I think the snow leopard is beautiful. It's the eyes in every single creature here. Look at the focus and determination on that eagle's eye. Beautiful card, that one. And the timber wolf is my ultimate favourite. It's absolutely stunning. So I love this deck because you can easily use it intuitively, of course. It also features elements, which I think adds, you know, depth to the whole deck. But on top of that, I like the fact that it continues to teach me, because as an example, I pulled the shark card when I was down there. And so intuitively, I jumped to, I guess you'd say, the cliche meaning that, you know, I may fear that I'm being swallowed up by a situation, or, you know, you get that sort of sense that there is a predator in the area, in the vicinity, or am I the shark? Yes, being eaten alive, swallowed up. But sharks always have to move, don't they? Is it that the card is trying to say that I need to make swift, or it'll be required of me to make swift decisions, or always, you know, being on the move, or ready to move, ready to take action, etc., etc. And, you know, they're all possibilities that could be spot on, feasible, exactly what I need to hear. You know, I mean, there's nothing better than your own intuition, is there? However, when I read the book, I really learned more, and it gave me a fresh perspective on this card, and that's what I love about this deck. So I'll read you just a little bit for shark, and you can see how you feel. It would be lovely if you would focus for us. Beautiful. So the shark says, the key words down here are perception, focus, fear, action. Shark is a threshold guardian. Her role is to test your commitment to the path you have chosen, not with intention to thwart or swallow you in the process, but to give you the gift of experiencing yourself, moving beyond that which may have held you back in the past. When shark swims into your waters, she does not do so to invoke fear, but to give you the opportunity to face your fears or hidden concerns and allow them to dissolve into the clear waters before you. Shark connects us with the creative element of water, with a level of discernment that allows us to be clear, decisive, and direct. Use your sensitivity to inform your actions. Harness the power of your emotions, but do not be consumed by them. Be willing to be dynamic and bold, to act on opportunities as they arise, but without clinging to the outcome you think you need. Shark's message is to stay in motion and focus on that which moves you forward, while remaining open to other gifts that may emerge on the path. Shark brings to you the power of heightened sensitivity. Take time to be alone, to find your quiet center and tune into your physical senses. And of course, that's exactly what I was doing at the time. So that sentence alone really hit home for me. In a very positive way, of course. So it goes on to say, these are your gateways to the subtle messages in the world around you. Listen, smell, feel, and see what shark senses, and you will gain great insight into your experience. Know that she is with you, honouring your steps into the unknown and offering great protection for your journey into it. So there you have it, the shark. So that opened my eyes. That gave me greater depth of meaning by taking the time to read the guidebook. So again, I'm not trying to correct anyone. I'm just saying, give yourself the time. You know, if you choose to use decks like this, make sure, if you can, that you have the time to honour the deck, because by doing so, you honour yourself. So I hope that helps you in some way. And there's so much more I could share, but I think I will end this video now. Otherwise, it's going to be way too long. And other than that, I'll say shine on. And I look forward to chatting again with you very soon. Take care, everyone. Bye.